on the winter issue of PMLD Link Journal, which was focused on current issues. So just a small selection of the articles that were in the last issue to showcase some of the great work that's going on around the country. So we've got three great presentations today. My name is Michael Fullerton. I'm on the editorial team with PMLD Link, and some of my colleagues are here as well today. Who are PMLD Link? So just going to quickly go through a couple of things before we get into the session proper. In terms of housekeeping, if you just keep yourself on mute during the session. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end, but if you have any burning questions or comments whilst people are presenting, then please put that in the chat, and then the presenter will be able to sort of engage with that when they're finished their slot. So three presentations, about 15 minutes in each. But in case you're unfamiliar, PMLD Link are a small charity, and sole focus on the charity is making sure we have a positive impact on the lives of children and adults with profound and multiple learning disabilities, their families and carers. It's a small charity. We've got a small group of volunteers who are a mix of family members, advocates, educational, health and social care professionals, and we're all passionate about sharing and learning about people with profound and multiple learning disabilities. We want to influence positive change by supporting people to be more visible in society and in policy. And we have the journal, which goes out 3 times a year, and that's to share and celebrate great lives and ideas about great support for people. And many of you here today will have contributed to that in one way or another and be subscribing to it as well. Also, we are keen to continually promote the PMLD core and essential service standards, and obviously through our socials and the journal to ensure we support great networking and information sharing. So my prompt. Going on my iPad. So with PMLD Link, we want to obviously sort of promote the work that we're doing and the journal and the standards. Like I say, it's a small charity. It relies on subscriptions to continue to do the great work that we're doing and ensuring that people have good access to great information. We have subscriptions across the UK and overseas as well. So if you are from the UK, you can subscribe individually, which is only £25 per annum, and organisations only £35, and anybody working within that organisation would have access to the online journals. There's a link to our website. You'll have sort of copies of these slides as well. Please do check out our website and check out the standards as well. With subscriptions, you can pay for those annually by cheque, bank transfer or PayPal. And if you were to set up a standing order for an annual payment with your bank, then there's an automatic renewal that's guaranteed. Any queries at all, then check out our email address, info@pmldlink.org.uk. And just to note that the service standards and lots of other resources are available on the website as free downloads. So do please check that out. Also, issues 1 to 100 are free to access for guest subscribers as well. So important to note that. So we've got 3 great sessions for you this afternoon, starting with Maureen from PAMIS around the power of stories, what matters to me, and that's Taylor and Sharon from the Challenging Behaviour Foundation, and finishing with Ellie, and that's a video presentation from Ellie and Flossie. and they might be joining us as well, in addition to the pre-recorded video. So if we can start with yourself, Maureen.
Yes, I can start. Do you want me just to go now?
Yeah, and I'll do the next slide. If you would, quick intro of yourself.
Right, okay. Would you move the slides for me? Yeah.
Yeah, has it moved?
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, well, hi everybody. It's really, really nice to be here. Before we begin, I don't know how many people know about PAMIS, but I'll just tell you a little bit very quickly, because I've already said to Michael, I'm going to struggle to talk about the power of stories in 15 minutes. So I'll try my best to rattle through it, because I could talk about stories all day. But I wanted to talk specifically about some of the things I wrote in the article for PMLD Link. But PAMIS stands for Promoting a More Inclusive Society. It's a Scottish charity. We work across Scotland. We work at a national level with the Scottish Government across parties. We work at a local level where we have a team of family support directors with there's 5 really in 5 areas, and we've got a community team, of which I'm a part of, that help open up communities for people with profound and multiple learning disabilities. So for us, the word profound means deep, it means wise, it means facilitator, it means teacher, and that's what we've tried to do, and that's what I want to try and come across in this presentation, about how the power of stories for people with profound and multiple learning disabilities. I'm just going to show you some examples as well of how the stories have opened up communities for people with profound and multiple learning disabilities in Scotland. So that first slide's just got a few pictures of some of the work that we've done. So for me, I work with stories in the community in a model called, it's a story model, well, it's an occupational therapy tool called the CAWA model, but CAWA stands for river, and for me, when I'm creating the stories for the community or for the young people and people we work with, I travel down the story river. So today what I wanted to do was travel down with you and show you some of the stories and the power of stories and what they've done for communities. So we've used art, we've used music, we use everything. So the idea is that to take away the fear of people that work in museums and maybe the Crannog Centre up in Aberfeldy, because we've got rural communities, we've got communities in the cities, the museums. So what I wanted to do today was give you an overview of all of that and show you the power of stories and what it can do for people. So yeah. So basically, come with me down my story river and I'll show you 1 or 2 examples of how we've opened up communities through the use of storytelling. So if we go to the next slide, the book I thought I've got to include this book in this presentation, because it's been a journey to get to here. But I don't know how many of you are familiar with the book, but for us, we started working with the Edinburgh International Book Festival about 6 or 7 years ago now. And it started off, people were very much audience members. They came along, they were in a room on their own, and they got a multi-sensory story presented with an author. So the idea was to help authors open up their book events to include people with profound and multiple learning disabilities. But over the year, we worked very slowly and at the pace that the team went in the Edinburgh Book Festival until we got to the stage that the people with profound and multiple learning disabilities moved from having a standalone event to being involved with other people, and they were all together as a community with mainstream children and adults, and then they moved to actually being a real integral part of the Edinburgh International Book Festival. Now the festival isn't the festival without them there in some way. So with this book, I wanted to add this book because I wanted to show you the power of story here, because the young people first got involved with Alexandra Strick and Steve Anthony with their first book, You Can. Then they moved on to be fully involved in the second book, and they designed the middle page of the book. They helped in the design of that. So don't know, you probably won't be able to see if I hold up the book. That's why I put some pictures there. So in the one of the pages that Steve designed, there's a changing places toilet, a mobile changing places toilet. For us, that was the pinnacle of, like, this picture book has got the voices of, not only has it got the voices of our people, but it's got the voices of all people with disabilities, but it's also showing in a nice way how story can get the message over. So for me, that was 6 years of work to get to that stage where actually that book, I feel that picture book will go out worldwide. It will do more to raise awareness of our group, and 3 of our families were in the little diagram. Freya, Brodie and Lauren are all in the back of the book. So I want to put that in the Story River today to show the power of story. And if we hadn't have authors like Steve and Alexandra Stricken willing to work with the families when they saw what the families could offer in the way of learning the wider community about what they need to have a good life. So that's in my Story River. So yes, I would encourage you to look at the book. So next page I have, so I have this page about collaboration. So you'll see at the top where I've got the river, there's an example of the river. That was done at a community event, in a community engagement event down in Ayrshire, where it's amazing down in Ayrshire. They've got the Health and Social Care Partnership, but culture is very much a part of that. So this was looking at coming down the river. So when you travel down the Story River, you've got to also remember you might hit a boulder on the way down the river, but there's always a piece of driftwood there to help you get round the boulder. So this was the team, the artistic creative team, doing their river to find out what might be the barriers to prevent community from engaging with this group of people. So I popped that on as an example that you can see how you can work with the river to identify what might be your barriers to working in the community. The other bits and pieces are on the page are just the robin at the top. It's a robin in that picture on the top, and that's I've put links as well. If people are getting the presentation afterwards, I've put further links so that you can go and have a look in more detail, because 15 minutes will pass very quickly. So the robin at the top is a project that we did with the gallery staff, the National Gallery for Scotland, in Modern One Art Gallery. The team there are phenomenal, the teaching and learning team. They're absolutely outstanding. And we worked together, developed 3 stories that weave the oral storytelling tradition with the sculptures that are there in the ground. So people can go along, they can take sensory art boxes out, they can take the stories out, they can spend a day at the gallery, they can go round the gallery, there's a cafe, there's a changing places toilet. It's fantastic. But again, like the International Book Festival, we've worked over a period of years with the galleries to make them feel comfortable with the families, and now the families are integral to what they do. In fact, the families have really informed everything that the galleries do in that department for wider groups as well. So they now run their own art sessions where people can come along and create their own stories. They bring objects from home. They have a freestyle art sessions that they can tell their story through art. They were part of a national exhibition where they displayed all their artwork alongside other folks. It was called Your Art World, and it's online. They can still do it even when they're at home. So the galleries really embraced that, and I would say they're the gold standard. They're what we want to achieve. They don't need PAMIS anymore. And that for me is the pinnacle of what we're trying to achieve, that there's a world where you don't need PAMIS, where, you know, we've learned from each other. So it's been a great collaboration. The young man down at the bottom beside his display there, that's again back at the book festival where they worked with George Webster. They told their own story. He told his wee story about going on a canal boat. He made a sculpture from the canal. He brought it along. He displayed it at the book festival. People came up, asked him about his sculpture, then learned his story. So people were loving to hear his story. So again, they took the lead. And the very bottom picture, they were on the stage with George Webster, so they absolutely loved that. They performed their own song, so they were very much an integral part of the book festival. And at that festival, they can go along, they get into the author's yurt, so they go in there and they just take it over. It's very natural for them. They just take over the yurt. So even that, the power of that, of these young people taking over the author's yurt, you know, really embraces the power of story for them. So the next slide, if I'm keeping to time. Yeah, the next slide is using story again, traveling down that story river with me. We've come to the Japanese garden. So I've gone from the galleries, museums, down to the book festivals, now locally in the community. In Cowden near Stirling, there's a wonderful Japanese garden. And so people can come there for the day, but usually people are just, you know, wandering around the garden. There's no sense of they get to learn about the garden. So what we did worked again with the learning and development team at the garden. They don't at the moment have a change in places toilet, which is always the downside, but we can take our mobile one along. And we developed 4 stories at the moment, but it's a work in progress with this community. And it's the bottom picture there you see with the lady in the wee photographs. That's the lady that designed the garden. So the power of her story is getting transferred over to the families when they go on a great day out, because that's what they want to do. They want to go on a great day out and know that there's things there when they go out in the community that they can actually access. So that's what we try to do with the stories. So that story is the lady that designed the garden. Above her is the gardener's story. So these are 2 personal stories, but through that they're learning about the garden and how the garden was designed and where the garden came from. The other 2 stories, the one at the top with the pictures with the pink flowers, that's a Zen garden story. So there's a Zen garden in the Japanese garden. Oh, so people can take that along. So that's me getting my little sign. I have 2 minutes left. So anyway, you get the idea that there's all these things out there in the community that people can access. But I'd like to finish with a song for you on video of the music group. Oh, well, I'll just skip that, Michael, because I've had my little rockets. Right.
When you feel down and sad and you think you're all alone, you can always talk to a friend and it'll make things feel better. Everyone gets these feelings, which is why it's good to talk. Don't carry these feelings around in a heavy suitcase. After the rain comes the sun, and after every climb there's a stroll. Look at the clouds up above, they all have a silver lining. Remember the light that shines at the end of every dark tunnel. Just keep on walking through and you will reach to the light. And after the rain comes the sun, and after every climb there's a stroll.
Community, thanks very much for listening.
Clouds up above, they all have a silver lining. And after the rain comes the sun, and after every climb there's a stroll. Look at the clouds up above, they all have a silver lining. They all have a silver lining. They all have a silver lining.
Oh, that's brilliant, Maureen. Thank you for that. Obviously, Maureen's full article is in the latest issue of PMLD Link. So please subscribe to get access to that. Thank you very much, Maureen. If you've got any questions for Maureen, if you could put them in the chat, any comments, that'd be really nice. And swiftly move on to Taylor and Sharon from the Challenging Behaviour Foundation.
Thanks, Michael. I'm not sure how I can follow that lovely video though. No pressure.
Brilliant.
Thank you ever so much for having us here. So my name's Taylor and I work for a charity called the Challenging Behaviour Foundation. And for the past, coming up for 3 years now, we've been working on a project called What Matters to Me. And I've been leading on the project. And I've got Sharon is also here with us today, and her son Fenton has been a part of the project. I don't know if she's around to say hello, but we will hear from her. Are you on the call, Sharon? Hear from Sharon in a minute. Can I move on to the next one, please? Thank you.
Sorry, yeah.
So the Challenging Behaviour Foundation, we're a small but national charity, and we're the only UK charity that's focused on supporting families whose relative has a severe learning disability and behaviours that may challenge. Now, for this project, it built on some previous project work that had been done, where we recognised that there were quite often a lot of crossovers with this group, with people with profound and multiple learning disabilities as well. So the What Matters to Me project. Oh, you're there, Sharon.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I
I
don't
just
know if
wanted
you
to
can
make sure
see me
you
or
was on the
not, can
call.
you? Can you see me or not?
Can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh, I'm having some issues, sorry, but I'm here.
Okay, excellent. So we widened the sort of scope really, so that the project was focused on young people with severe or profound or multiple learning disabilities. Next one, thank you. So the What Matters to Me project has been a 3-year project, and as I said previously, it's built on some previous work from the Challenging Behaviour Foundation, some previous direct engagement projects, and it's involved directly engaging with young people. So we were working with people that were 16 to 25-year-old with severe or profound and multiple learning disabilities, as well as their families and their support circles. So we have used a mixed method approach, and that's been adopted off of the back of the previous projects. And through this, we've been taking a range of wonderful pictures and video films to evidence the learning of this, so that the experiences and the preferences and views can be really sort of captured through this work. And the stage that we're at the moment is sort of pulling all of that learning together and sharing it in a multimedia manifesto, and then being able to use that to shape the support and the services and to influence policy. Thank you. So I just thought this was quite nice to put in here, and it was something that when we discussed the sort of name and things, it was thinking about what matters to me. And actually it's for this group of young people that we've been working with, and what we found, which we probably could have preempted at the beginning, is actually a lot of these things are really the same as what would matter to you and to me. We just need to make sure that the right things are in place to be able to, for the young people to be able to access that. Thank you. So I had, Michael, I'll hold my hands up. I'd done a bit of a simplified version that I added in a bit short notice, and I forgot to send it across to you. So just to give you a bit of a background, and I'll try and do this a bit more simple than it's on the screen at the moment, but thinking about sort of how did we run the project and what did we do to actually find out what's really important for young people with severe or profound and multiple learning disabilities. Well, the first sort of steps were the sort of planning stages, I guess, really, and finding out, gathering that information and getting a real understanding of what's important for the young people and what things they like, which things they don't like, things that are really important to them, things we really need to be aware of, the people that are important to them, that we sort of really needed to gather at the beginning. And part of that was the sort of consent and best interest process, and especially with that sort of extra layer of when we're taking photographs and films of people with complex needs who wouldn't be able to consent themselves to partaking in that. And that process in itself, as you can all imagine, was a really big piece of work, but gave us a real sort of insight, even before we had started that direct engagement, about the needs of the young people that we were working with. And then the next part is about sort of observing and learning. So we spent quite a lot of time at the beginning going and meeting all of the young people. So we worked with 11 young people, and that was across the South East, so in Kent, East Sussex and South East London. It was purely for logistical reasons. So because I was the one going out and meeting all of the young people, we had to make sure that it was sort of logistically manageable and where we was based down in the southeast. So 11 young people and their families we've worked with. And during that sort of getting to know the person phase, I guess, we went along and we met some of the young people either at home or perhaps in their college, or went out with them and their families in their community. And before we was even trying to do that direct engagement, we was just sitting back, observing and learning about all of the things that were, you know, really unique to that person. And then it meant that when we could sort of tailor our engagement activities, we had a sort of good starting point there of how to do that. And then that brings us on to the sort of third step as such, which is thinking about that direct engagement and thinking all of the things that we've learned in that sort of information gathering stage and observation stages. What things do we think we want to do for activities that we think are going to be meaningful for these young people, that we want to try? And we've done some activities in groups and also some activities on a more of a sort of individual basis too. So some of them activities were sort of simple day-to-day things where perhaps we might take some different sensory or art and craft items and music and things to the group, and we'd sort of just explore them together. And then we had some facilitators come in and do some sort of bigger sessions. So we had Nicola Grove come and done some story sharing. We had project artwork. So we'd done a bit of a mixture of things. So probably should have mentioned before as well. So at the Challenging Behaviour Foundation, we're not a service provider or a care provider. So we partnered with 2 project sort of partners and local organisations who could support facilitating the group. So we worked with Demelza, which is a local sort of children's hospice, and also in a SEND college as well. And we also worked with a young lady within her own home. And the sort of purpose and thought behind that was to show the adaptability of the approach, that even if a young person isn't accessing a service like Demelza, or they're no longer in an education provision like iField, that they absolutely can and should be involved in sort of consultations and decision-making processes and things like that. And then the last step was about sort of checking and reviewing. So we spent a lot of time with families and key people to say, you know, we think we've learnt this is what we think, and this is what we're interpreting. You know, are we sort of getting that right? Just sort of checking that, you know, what we think we're learning it rings true to the people that know them best as well. Thank you. So our project learning, we've sort of got in 3 sort of strands really. It's about how do we find out what matters. So them sort of steps about actually going and doing engagement with this group of young people, which we know doesn't happen sort of ordinarily when it's people making decisions or consultations. They may often not go far enough to reach this group. So even if consultations or sort of things are including people with learning disabilities, quite often it's not people with complex needs and with severe or profound and multiple learning disabilities, where you really need to really get to know the young person to be able to sort of engage with them well. And off of the back of that, we've come up with 6 principles of engagement, of things that we learned to be important to consider throughout this project. And then the sort of second part, and this we feel has to sort of go hand in hand, is how do we use what matters? So we may have done some fantastic engagement and feel we've learned something, but then where does that go? What do we do with that information so that it actually has an influence and creates a positive change for this group? And then our project sort of theme and focus was around transition. So given the age of the young people that we was working with and of them sort of conversations that we had with families at the early stages, we focused around getting our findings around transition and thinking about what needs to be in place for these young people as they move into adulthood. So I'm going to whiz through these really quickly because I know we don't have much time, but just to give you a brief sort of idea of what we're working on at the moment to put into the manifesto. Thank you. So again, I'm just going to go through these quite quickly. I apologise, the font's quite small, but I think, Michael, these are going to be shared around to everybody afterwards anyway. But the sort of key things we found was, you know, about making sure we're including the families and support circles and the people that know these young people best, investing time to get to know the person and not just sort of going in thinking, oh yeah, that's fine. All these young people we worked with have really individual needs, and you really need to spend that time to really get to know that, to be able to then get sort of anything back. And a lot of these things are quite interlinked. So building relationships and developing a real understanding of the person's needs and the things that they like and dislike, and incorporating that in your engagement and thinking creatively about how you can use that. Considering the environment, so sort of sensory needs, accessibility, familiarity, so all of these things need to work for the person if you're trying to run engagement, not expect them to sort of fit in with what you're planning. And then, of course, being flexible and adaptable and using individualised approaches. Thank you. So this was just a sort of graphic that we put together. And again, I wanted to sort of simplify this before we were sharing it, but it's about thinking about where does that young person or the people that we're supporting or working with, how much of an influence do they have on their lives and the sort of at these different levels. And this is where we wanted the manifesto and all of the findings from our manifesto to feed into all of these different things. We've touched upon it really briefly already, where we've got a fantastic example, and in the multimedia case study, we've got it as a video case study, and it's so powerful from those that have seen it already. But I don't know how long I've got left, but I'm going to try and quickly tell you. We done, from one of our earlier engagement days, we done like an exploring experiences day where we was up at Demelza with a group of 4 young people, and we just wanted to spend the day exploring the different facilities within Demelza and sort of gauging reactions and sort of learning from that. And we've done a group hydro session, and ordinarily the young people would access hydro with perhaps just their caregiver, and it would just be them in the pool, and they would have a pool session and then get back out again. And we said, well, let's get all the young people in the pool together, because, you know, a typical teenager would probably go to swimming with their peers and go and do things with their friends, and let's sort of see how that plays out and see their reactions to that. And it was just fantastic, and I think Sharon will probably end up saying something about this afterwards, but it was just the expressions and the, you know, the reactions that the young people had, being able to engage with friends of the same sort of age within the pool without the barriers of sort of wheelchairs and everything around them, was just, it was so special. And I'm so pleased that we've managed to capture that on video, and that sort of formed part of the manifesto. And as a result of that, Demelza said, oh my gosh, we need to do this more. And they now run group hydro sessions so that young people and families can book on together and they can go and access the pool together. So that's really great. Just seeing the rocket science, I'm going to go quickly so we get to hear from Sharon as well. Thank you. And transition, we've got 8 key findings from transition. I'm not going to go through all of them in detail because I want to pass on to Sharon so that she can just tell you a little bit about Fenton and her experience of participating in the project. Thank you. Thank you. Sharon, is it okay to hand over to you?
There we go. Am I there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're there.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. This is my son Fenton. We got involved with Taylor and the project 2-3 years ago now, and it's been such simple things have literally been life-changing for Fenton. As Taylor said, the hydrotherapy was just phenomenal. Fenton's had access to the pool on and off over the years, but never in situations where he's been able to choose a friend. You know, at school it's with his class friends, whereas Fenton was actually able to go into the pool with other young people in the group and through that built up a fantastic relationship with the young lady in the bottom photo, as you can see, and the interaction that they had together, being close to each other, communicating with each other, you know, touching each other's hands and smiling, is something that he's never ever been given, I say, the luxury of doing, but it's, you know, it shouldn't be a luxury. It should just be a basic standard thing that he should be able to access at any point. The second picture, the middle picture, was an art day that we did, and Fenton has got, I call him his chicken wings. He pulls his arms up quite high into his chest. So cleaning him up after he's done something is not that easy. So Taylor just came up with the idea of, well, let's put the paint on the paper and then put it into a clear film so that Fenton could still do the messy art, and had a brilliant time, but without the aggro of trying to clean him up afterwards, which he doesn't enjoy. So it's just really small, really simple things that were put in place that, you know, honestly are life-changing for someone like Fenton, who should be able to access a pool with his friends and should be able to do art or music. And, you know, just by sitting back, looking at him as a person in his own right, with his own needs, and just small little tweaks to things, you know, the days were able to facilitate all of his needs, which, you know, generally speaking, you know, we've got a local pool and it's got fantastic changing places, but then it doesn't have a hoist into the pool. So Fenton still can't access that pool with his friends. So just to have a mobile hoist would make such a difference, but it's just getting these small changes in place. You know, it's you go somewhere and they say, yes, you know, we're wheelchair accessible. We've only got, you know, one step. Well, one step's not wheelchair accessible. It's just people need to fully look at these young people, take time to have a quick look at them, you know, talk to them. Yes, they might not be able to communicate, but they can let you know what they do and don't like doing and want to do. Just people have to take the time to look at them as individuals and treat them with, you know, respect, and just take time to get to know them. And nowadays, unfortunately, that still isn't happening. You know, it's getting better, but we're not there. And like I say, the small things that were put in place with the Challenging Behaviour Foundation, yes, we were lucky enough that we have the Melza behind us, just opened up so many windows and opportunities for all of these young people. It was, or is, such a great cause to be involved with, and we're lucky enough to be involved with it. And hopefully these steps will go the right way to making further changes that last forever, so that all these young people can access, you know, days like we have.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you so much. So the multimedia manifesto, we're in the real sort of thick of it, bringing it all together at the moment, and we are sharing it at two upcoming events in March. So we're launching it at the House of Commons in early March. So we've got some real good sort of key national interest in it as well, which is fantastic. And we really hope that it'll be picked up and more things will be shared, and the more sort of places, and even it's just raising awareness. That's all our sort of high level aim is, for especially the in-person. We just want people like MPs and sort of key decision makers to think, are you thinking about people with severe or profound and multiple learning disabilities when you're doing X, Y, Z, and in that. And then we have an online webinar 2 weeks later on the 27th of March, where we'll be able to explore all of the things that we've sort of really quickly gone through in a bit more detail about that. So the event, there's still some spaces for the event sign up, so I can send that through. Apologies, shameless plug, Michael. I'll send the link through in the chat. Yeah, so it's it'd be great to have some more people there. So, and I'll just leave on that. I apologise, I know we've gone over, but thank you so much for having us here. We're really excited to see hopefully some changes that will come from this. Thank you.
No, really appreciate that, both of you. Yeah, just I think we've got a pre-recorded presentation from Oily Cart, but you know, it just gives a bit of a taster for what's in the journal, and there's much more besides, but you know, some real inspiration there. Now, got to risk a video working for me, so let's see how we get on with that one. This is. You just stop the share because I don't think that's the right link. Sorry, just bear with me a minute. Let's see if this works. We'll try behind the scenes.
If you have problems, I am actually here live, and I've got
You're live, yeah.
I've got my script.
Oh, hang on. Let me see, Ellie. I think I might have got it. It was working just before we come on. Let me just give us one more second. No, it's not showing up. So is that Ellie or Flossie?
Yeah, I can do it live. Can you make me co-host and I can share my PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, so it's low. When you want it won't happen.
It's fine, not to worry. Also, if you, I mean, I could. Well, no, I may as well do it since I'm here. And I have a quiet space. Okay. Great. Okay, shall I go ahead?
Crack on. Thanks, Ellie.
No worries. We're really pleased to be here. Thank you so much for having us. My name's Ellie. So I'm the artistic director of a sensory theatre company called Oily Cart. So Oily Cart has been going for about 40 years, and it pioneered this new form of theatre that was really accessible and up close, that you can see, smell, touch, taste, feel. And we particularly prioritise children who have the most barriers to access, or children who have profound and multiple learning disabilities. So in every creative process, from the very beginning, we think about people who might have the most barriers to accessing a standard theatre show. We start from there, and we spend time with people, school classes in specialist schools, or disabled young people that we get in the rehearsal room and to collaborate with us in process. And then we look for what the shared points of interests are between the creatives working on the show and the young people themselves. And we kind of build from there. So to pinch a term that Joanna Grace uses, or said once, of rich inclusion, we deliberately prioritise people with the most barriers, and then we create something that we believe will work for them, with the idea that this will then be a bit like an upside down triangle and support everyone with less barriers along the way. So what we find is that we tend to make a show specifically for children with profound and multiple learning disabilities. And then more often than not, the feedback we get is, oh, I'd love this for me, or my like everyone in my family to come, or my toddler, or for myself. Or so it really is using sensory theatre as a kind of universal language, making sure we think about people with the most barriers first. So in the journal, the article is all about When the World Turns, which is the show that we're touring around theatre venues at the moment. So right now I'm in the South Bank, and the show has just been going on for an audience group. The show was created with a company called Polyglot, who are based in Australia, and their work is all about theatre that's very child-led. So, so this show is really, really following the lead of the young people. And we decided that in making the show from the very beginning, that the people that we really wanted to follow the lead of were the young people that are most likely to be rushed past or get overlooked or ignored in a normal theatre situation. So particularly children who might have quite a still way of being in the world, or might seem quite passive, or might communicate in ways that we don't recognise. What we notice is that even in an inclusive theatre setting, when there are children that are really active and that are giving lots of responses, naturally the performers will sort of be attracted to working most with these young people, because everyone loves feedback, particularly performers. So it's a bigger challenge to really take the time and slow down and make space for people whose communication styles you might recognise less. So this show, more than anything, was asking, what happens if we honour the atmosphere that these young people that have a very still way of being in the world offer us? And what can that teach us, particularly about our relationship with the natural world? So our shows are quite hard to describe, so I'm going to show you some photos to illustrate a bit of what I'm talking about. Share. So the show is set in this living, breathing sensory environment. So the set is designed with 300 living plants, which creates this it creates this lovely atmosphere. There's more oxygen in the air from the plants, and there's natural scent that the plants bring with them. And what we find is that when the families or school classes come into this space, they often just naturally breathe out and kind of don't want to leave at the end. We use, there's 6 young people in the audience at a time, and they're accompanying adult, and we use lots of close-up techniques. So the performers really follow the children's lead in what happens next. So they're really improvising. And what you can see here is kind of making the sounds of nature. There's both surround sound speakers hidden in the plants, which you can feel at the floor through times when there's like the rumble of thunder. But then we also make sure there's lots of up-close sounds that are very directional and focused, that feel like they're being made just for you in your ear. So we find those 2 playing spaces of the really localized and then the really immersive global. They're like the 2 really juicy playing spaces for this audience. There's lots of things to feel and touch, and we do lots of, there's a canopy hanging from the roof where there's some plant shadows and the shadows of water. So this is the whole space, and you can see the performers working there. They have puppets that are designed all from recycled and objects that have had other purposes in their past lives, but they're also designed so they have a nice tactile quality, both soft and sort of spiky if people have different preferences about the input they prefer. Here are some light up squids, as you do, made from wires that were reclaimed from having been thrown away and sort of washed and made safe. And there's a boot brush centipede, which is really good for giving that spiky sensory input, which lots of young people really respond to. So in the process, it's really important that we work with young, creative, disabled young people as much as possible. And this is an artist that we've worked with. She was involved in our research and development process based in a school. So this is Greta Macmillan, who communicates through eye gaze and is a wheelchair user. So she was giving us lots and lots of direction, and actually went on to co-direct or co-lead a version that we went on to make for families that they could experience in their own homes, because we were continually getting this feedback that with the best will in the world, it's not always possible to get to a theatre venue. So we've deliberately made these different versions. The show has gone to specialist schools, the show has gone to venues, and the shows have gone to home. So we're always trying to make theatre that can meet people wherever they're at, and making sure the quality never goes down, regardless. This is some of the feedback quotes you can see. We have a big focus on the accompanying adult and bringing them into a sensory state of mind so that they can enjoy the show with the young person they're with, rather than it being a show that feels like it's being done to the young person. So it's nice to read the feedback that reflects this, that it's an enjoyable, restorative experience creatively for everyone. So the initial idea of it being set in this natural environment was a conversation we had in the beginning with a family who had a young person who has profound and multiple learning disabilities. And they were speaking about how they were often made to feel they didn't belong in natural or wilder spaces because they weren't made accessible to them. And furthermore to that, the feeling that somehow the way their young person was in the world physically wasn't natural because of being very medicalized or requiring equipment or support. And this conversation was obviously very disturbing and quite devastating and stayed with me. So more than anything, this show is a show that brings the young people into the world and says, you belong here. You are a vital part of the ecosystem. Your value is not tied up in how much you do or in being independent, because we are all interconnected. And actually in this show, the young people really are our guides. The show really celebrates stillness and what we learn when we are a bit more still, and we do focus a bit less on doing, and we sit longer with being. And this comes from work we've done with Dr. Jill Goodwin, who I think is here today in the talk. And Jill is a friend and advisor to the company and to this show. And the phrase that she's coined of being with rather than doing to really is our guiding principle for how we perform with our audience, but also how we learn from the young people we're spending time with. So the storytelling of the show, which is sort of echoing back to one of the talks earlier, I can show you, this is our touch map that each audience member gets to feel with their adult before they go in. And you are here is another way of both helping them navigate where they are in the show, but also just that reinforcing of you belong here in this ecosystem. And there's a tactile symbol for each section, and also some text, which we hope gives the adult a kind of emotional journey as well. So this first one says, rooted in our ecosystem. And the next one, which is when there are plant shadows on the roof, says, unseen life surrounds us. And it continues onward. So it's kind of giving this story framing that doesn't need to be linear. It can be, but also an access tool for helping navigate where you are in the show and placing yourself. And really one of the things that we celebrate is that stillness means you can notice what's there around you, all the different forms of life that you might just rush past usually. So out of these plants, all different things come to life, puppets, and putting focus on the living, breathing plant through the shadows. And it's all sort of really reinforcing the idea that that there are all these different ways of communicating all the time. It could be through a network under the soil of mycelium. It's not prioritizing the verbal. And a way of us showing that in the show is having the lighting, the sound, just as important parts of the show as anything the performers do. So we're kind of like the performers and the humans in the show are, it's not a story about them. It's really a show that's all about the whole ecosystem and giving it all equal value. I know we're sort of coming to an end. So the last thing I'll mention is we worked with a designer who calls herself an eco-scenographer, and she pointed us towards the biophilic patterns. And we had lots of fun using these biophilic patterns in the creation of the show. So it's a term usually used in design and architecture, and it's basically showing that if you take these certain 14 patterns from nature, and if you stitch them into the design of your workshop, your activity, your setting, if you take these patterns of nature, it can have a really great effect on people's well-being when they're in that activity or in that space, because you're connecting them to nature, even if they can't get out and about into it. So it's things like, one pattern is presence of water, which is why we have water in the show. One pattern is risk and peril, or diffuse dynamic light. So like that lovely light you get in dawn when it goes through the leaves and the leaves are moving a bit in the breeze. It's these things that just make you feel connected to the world around you. And I'd really encourage you to look up the biophilic patterns, because they're great fun to play with, and we structured the whole show around them. And I really do believe that's why this show does have a really sort of calming, restorative effect on everyone who enjoys it. Yeah, that's probably the best place to leave it just now. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but thanks so much for listening. And the show is on tour, so it's in London at the moment, but if you look on the Oily Cart website, which I'll put in the chat, you can find the future tour dates, because it's on till the end of March, and hopefully we'll come back also in autumn. Thanks very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Ellie. Much better live as well. So yeah, thank you so much for that. We are sort of like I guess about a minute away from 1 o'clock. There's been some question, a small number of questions, Ellie, but I think Flossie's been dealing with them on the chat there.
Amazing. I'll put the link to the biophilic patterns document that we used. That's one thing that might be handy, I think, it's in a question.
Yeah. One key question, any dates for Tasmania in Australia?
Oh, I wish. We made the show with an Australian company. So if you look up, I'll put their name in the chat, Polyglot Theatre have their own version, which is going around Australia at the moment. So I think you should put in a request. Surely you can make that happen.
Nice one. Okay, I don't think we have time for any more questions, but obviously when we share the slides, you'll have everybody's contact details. Like I say, it just gives a small taster of the articles, the contributions that come through the PMLD Link Journal. So as you can see, it's like some incredible stuff going on. Yeah, just want to continue sharing that. The only way we can share that is with subscriptions. So please continue to subscribe. Don't forget to renew as well. But also, if you're working in an organization, harass whoever holds the budget. Tell them to make sure that they get an organizational subscription. And we're just slightly over time. We'll sort of save the chat as well. So if we need to communicate with anybody beyond today. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time out. I know time is valuable. So thank you so much. I'm really grateful. Thank you.